Time for some peony practice. This is going to be strategic, so let's get started. Peony time is coming, and that is going to be the time to paint peonies. And I like to do it for the month of June. Mine are just about coming up. I know in some places in the country they're almost over. So we're going to talk about how to do it and to do it without going petal by petal. So my strategy, and this is my strategy, it's not anything anybody else needs to use, is I put in my darkest darks first. Now you can see on the far right, I made some dark dabs. Those are the dark dabs that I'm using to put in the darkest parts of this peony. And I apologize for not having the photograph. It's going to come up later in the video, but I can't remember where. And I've searched in my archives to find this photo. But it doesn't matter. It would be the same thing if it was any pink peony. The strategy still would be to find at least 3, and in this case 4 dark colors that you can put in and as the dark shapes of the peony. So there they are, and you can see them on the far right where it says D is the darks. Now I've mixed up 4 mediums, which are in the middle, and 1 light. And the light is almost white, but it's a Naples yellow. So I dry my paper, and I'm coming back in, and now I'm going to work on my mediums. And I'm using 3 colors to fill in the shapes that I see as medium shapes. Now, the other thing that happens is, of course, I'm looking at the shapes and where they shift. But the other thing that I'm doing is I also am using my knowledge of peonies from painting them for years and years and years. I know that they tend to be jagged on the edges, and I know they tend to be more saturated in terms of the petals as they come into the middle. And that's just something, that's just knowing. So there's a certain amount of painting that, you gain information not just from what you see, but from what you know over time. And that just is the case with peonies. And it's just different than roses. Roses tend to have soft petals, but they also do have more saturation in the middle than they do usually at the end of the petals. So this is very careful work here. And what I do is I squint my eyes, I look at the photograph, and I look for anything that is mid-toned. And by mid-toned, I mean anything that is lighter than anything I put in already. That's the only rule here. And so that's what I'm doing. So I've mixed up these puddles where it says M, that medium column. I mix those up, and I have I have a lot of paint in those piles because I want to apply paint, not a lot of water. And I want to let the wet paint mix into wet paint. So there you see almost a peach going in on that petal. Let's see what happens next. I'm going to carry that peach over. Now I've gone back in for a different color. Yeah, and I put it right next to that petal. Because the overall peony is one color. If you look at the photograph, it mostly looks like a pink peony. You would say, oh, that peony is pink. But that pink is comprised of many different pinks, very similar to skin tones of a Caucasian person. And these are exactly the same colors I would use if I was painting a portrait. And you can go to joemackenzie.com and look at my portraits, because I'm doing the exact same thing, only this happens to be a flower and sometimes it's someone's face. Everything to me is just value shapes and plugging in value into the shape. Very similar in a way to the paint by number sets that we used to have when we were kids. I don't want to diminish it and say that it's quite that simple or rudimentary, but that's kind of how I think of it in my head. I don't think about the subjects. I just look at shape and value, and I plug that in. So that's what's happening here. And like I said, most of the peony is mid-toned. So most of the peony is going to be, I'm going to put those 4 colors in. And that takes a little while to do. Oh, and I'm using a flat brush. Looks like, gee, it looks like a number 10, but I can't believe it would be that small. I can't see. I would say that's at least a 12, a little bit bigger than that. Because what I want to do is I want to apply paint and get it on there and let the wet paint mix into wet paint. What I want to avoid is any kind of dabbing or any kind of stroking or licking, because if I do that, it's going to take away the saturation of the color. So I want to be really, really sure about what the color is that I want to put in, be sure what the shape is that I want to put in, and only then do I execute and go in and do it, which is quite definitive. So this is probably speed it up. It's probably 2 times as fast as I work. So I work very deliberately. And I try to use as few strokes as possible, but that's just a choice of something that I like to do. Now, if you're watching this and this is going too slow for you and you're watching this on YouTube, you can touch the screen and you'll get 3 dots will appear on the upper right-hand corner, and you can speed this up or slow it down, which is really helpful. So, so as you can see, it's starting to take some shape, and I have to pause and see what happens next. All right, I picked up a little bit of that Naples yellow and pulled the stem down. But that's not going to stand. You know, what I have right now is an island surrounded by oceans painting, and that's not going to be okay with me. I need to put it in a context, which I will do soon. What I'm doing right now is I mixed up, you can see the L. I mixed some more lights, which you can see there's a lemon yellow, there's a Naples yellow. So now once again, just like before, I have 4 colors. So I have 4 colors for my darks, 4 colors for my mediums, and 4 colors for my lights. And I left the whites of my paper white. That's where I wanted the highlights to be. I don't use white out. I don't think, I think people should use it, of course, but I never use it successfully, ever. There might have been one time when I used it successfully, but I really don't. And for me, when I take it off the paper, it tends to look like it leaves a scar, and I don't like that hard edge. I like edges that can be soft. I like a mixture of hard and soft edges. All right, so now I would have probably dried, or I was working slow enough that things are dry, and I just didn't feel like I had enough contrast in my darkest darks. And so I'm going in, I mixed up a dark violet, and I'm going in and placing that strategically. That's going to just enhance the value range. You know, the stronger the value range I can get, I think the more impactful the painting is. But you know, that, again, that's subjective. Some people like to paint just in a high key. Some people like to paint just in a low key. I like to see if I can get the full value range. Now, time for the background. So what I always do, and what I always say at this point, is I only use colors that I've already used in the painting. So this would not be green from a tube. This is going to be green already mixed from any blue, probably ultramarine blue, and any yellow, probably that lemon yellow or that Naples yellow. In other words, any colors I've already used in the painting. Because I find if I bring a color in now that I haven't used to mix other colors, it will sort of look, it'll look disjointed, and almost it'll look like the peony or the subject was cut out and glued on top. So it's really good to use a limited palette in this case, and so I'm using only colors that I've already used to mix other colors. That's a shorter way of saying what I'm trying to say. I still, on reflection now, I'm looking at it and seeing that it's a little bit more island surrounded by oceans than I want it to be. I probably should have cut in some other shapes, which I don't think I do in this case. And I think that was because I ended up making this a series of peonies that were all the same size and framed them together in kind of a grid. And so I knew I didn't want that background to be too busy and compete. So remember to keep the white sheet. There's the peony that I worked from, but you can work from any peony you want to. And I would suggest trying a pink one before a red one or a white one. The red ones are quite dark. It's harder to find the value range in a dark one, and the white ones, you know, you got to find substitutions for white, which for me, I use the primary colors for that. It's very similar to painting clouds. To me, a peony is just an intricate cloud. And here I am putting in some final touches. Now this isn't going to change the value at all. All I'm doing here is I'm probably putting in a second coat in some places that will enhance the brightness of the color. But it's not going to change the value. I don't change the value plan once I've started on something. I will not vary from the value plan. I've learned over time that if I do, it becomes chaotic. It might not work in the end. I'm not saying all my paintings work. They don't all work, that's for sure. But they won't fail because I abandoned my strategy halfway through. I become pretty disciplined about that. So, like I said, these are the final touches. And in the end, there's very little white of the paper left. but I think it gives the feeling of a peony. If you've looked at peonies, you know that they tend to be a little bit fluffy and they sort of bend and move in the breeze. And I think it's kind of had that feeling, which is, you know, what I'm after. I'm not after. It's different if I'm doing a portrait of somebody and I need to get things exactly right, like their, you know, their features. But with a peony, I'm a little bit freer. I can just embrace the the overall genre of what a peony is. So with peony time coming up, I'm going to be painting more of these and in different colors. But for right now, I thought I would at least get this one started. And you might be able to screen capture that peony that's in the bottom left-hand corner and go ahead and use it. That's fine with me. One peony is the same as the next to me. I don't get attached to these things. So, as always, remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mask for value, mix for color. And if you would be so kind, please join my YouTube channel. And I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.